Plantations don't mean anything when...
Do you mean to tell me, Katie Scarlett O'Hara, that land doesn't mean anything to you? Why, land is the only thing in the world worth working for, worth fighting for, worth dying for, because it's the only thing that lasts.
I sometimes stop and think about the longevity and the staying power of Gone with the Wind here at the 70th anniversary.
There's something there that still resonates.
Another dance and my reputation will be lost forever.
Enough courage you can do without a reputation.
It had a tremendous impact on me at many different levels. And it automatically became one of my favorite films. And to me, it's one of the greatest movies ever made.
Scarlett O'Hara, she's a forerunner of the modern businesswoman. So the movie is simultaneously about the past and yet about the present.
All I ask is that you keep the mill running and deliver my lumber when I want it.
No one has ever re-released a picture 6 times the way Gone with the Wind was released theatrically, and none have been so successful in re-releases.
I think the fan base is not dwindling for the film, it's growing.
Gala Days in Dixie, the history-making world premiere of the motion picture epic Gone with the Wind.
I went to all the premieres. The first one was in Atlanta. Everybody else was flying in the actual day of the premiere, but this was the day before the premiere that I arrived. And they didn't know what to do with me, so they made me official mayor for the day. And I let all the children out of school. And I just had a lovely time doing that. And then they sent me to an old soldier's home. And it's an experience I'll never forget, because by that time, this was 39, and the Civil War was 65 or 66. These were boys. They were 13 and 14-year-old boys who had lied about their age to serve their part of the South. And these old boys were fabulous. They all said they felt well enough to go to the premiere. They were looking forward to it. And one of them excused himself and went inside, and he came out and gave me some Confederate money, which I have to this day. And I thought, I'm living history. I'm living with people who went through history.
Atlanta's few remaining boys in gray are guests of honor.
They had a parade that just went on for a couple of hours. People were going crazy. It was just so celebratory. And everybody was all gussied up. Carol Lombard looked so magnificent. She and Clark Gable just made the crowd catch on fire.
Diminutive Margaret Mitchell, the author, who rarely appears in public, attends to see her brainchild and is excited beyond words.
Margaret Mitchell did her research for 10 years. There are those who believe that she used a diary from her great aunt, taken during the Civil War, that provides an authentic account, a sense of authenticity about the movie and about the book. The book came out in 1936 and was a recommendation of the Book of the Month Club before it ever came out.
The novel kept being a bestseller for I don't know how many years. It seemed as if every 14-year-old girl, when she became 14, read Gone with the Wind.
In those days, we had soda fountains in the drugstores, and if you went there about midday, you would see people having their lunch at the counter and propping the book up against the oranges, against anything. And when you finished it, you normally would go back to page 1 and read it all over again. You saw, you touched, you felt, you smelled everything that was going on there.
The book became this hit.
I love you.
It became a potential for a chick flick. It became a potential for a war story. It became potential for a He-Man drama. All of these things. And I think that's why Selznick had such trouble getting one writer or one director to put it all together. He went through numerous directors and numerous writers and still wondered whether he had really captured Gone with the Wind, the collapse of a civilization, on film.
Gone with the Wind is one of those exceptions that proves the rule. Great films get made by people who have a passion to tell a story. And that's usually the director. And here's an example of a film where that one person was the producer, and everyone else, including the director, because there was more than one director, it was subordinate to him. And he was the one with the passion, the one with the drive, the one who refused to accept anything less than the very best. And that's one of the reasons it's unusual and stands out in the history of Hollywood.
We had the publishing phenomenon, now we have the motion picture phenomenon. It was an event.
Nobody had ever seen a movie that had an interval before, and they didn't want to get up and leave their seats for the intermission.
This was going to be what they called a roadshow attraction. It was like a theatrical production where you bought tickets in advance, you checked your seat out in advance, you paid more money, and of course it was not showing all over town, it was in that one theater, and of course everybody's running to get their tickets. They withdrew it from the roadshow in the middle of 1940. This was 6 months after it came out. Then in 1941, not a scene uncut, exactly, only thing different is the price. So then it was on a regular grind. There was no lack of interest.
Unlike some films that would only play Monday through Wednesday at a neighborhood theater, Gone with the Wind lingered. It was in release a long time, and people did go back more than once.
During World War II, in the spring of 1940, the film opened up in London. It's a hit. Now the bombs start. People are still lining up to go see Gone with the Wind, up until just before D-Day. Now, that's extraordinary. So you're talking about another phenomenon in a series of phenomenons with regard to Gone with the Wind.
I don't suppose it looks like much to a lady, but I can't help being proud of it.
It's all over the wall!
It's not possible. Why did we ever fight?
A primary theme of Gone with the Wind, as announced in the text shown on screen in the main title, is the destruction of a civilization. And I believe that that is something that will always be profoundly distressing to people to contemplate.
Take a good look, my dear. It's a historic moment. You can tell your grandchildren how you watched the old South disappear one night.
When World War II was over, people saw the film, and the Japanese were extremely fond of it. They saw it, as a kind of a fight for survival. They had been beaten, but they were able to come out of it. And as such, I think it resonated with people.
It's an epic that doesn't feel dated the way so many costume epics do.
Hope this one isn't hungry. You'll be hungry.
To do that magnificent foreground of family, of love and loss against the whole Civil War and Reconstruction background, it's just a major feat.
And there's a lesson in that. It's a lesson of war. It's about war. It's about what Rhett Butler predicts and what Ashley himself agrees with, that every war starts out with high ideals and then ends up in the gutter.
The cause of living in the past is dying right in front of us.
I never heard you talk like that before.
I'm angry. Waste always makes me angry, and that's what all this is, sheer waste.
There is that theme in Gone with the Wind. You see war pretty much for what it is. That terrible scene in the Battle of Atlanta where they're laid out there on the ground on that red clay, moaning and hurting and suffering, that's war. It just reminds us what Sherman said in the Battle of Atlanta, that there's no glory in it, boys. War is hell.
The Japanese country was so destroyed by World War II. And then again, Germany and Japan, those two countries, have published more editions of Gone with the Wind. And of course, the Japanese were the first to put it on the stage.
I remember my mother was talking about it. Yes, and I remember that the famous phrase she used to say was, 明日は明日の風が吹く.
I won't think about that now.
I think about it tomorrow.
I'm going to make friends with the Yankee carpetbaggers, and I'm going to beat them in their own game, and you're going to beat them with me.
Starting in the 50s, studios no longer owned their theaters because of the government decree, the antitrust. So there were all kinds of changes, television coming in and so forth. But when you had something as potent as Gone with the Wind, and you carefully orchestrated when you were going to reissue it and how, this was a major help for MGM.
As with all motion picture companies, MGM was constantly in financial difficulty of one sort or another, and Gone with the Wind would regularly help pay the payroll, because someone would say, what are we going to do? We need some cash flow, and somebody would say, well, then why not re-release Gone with the Wind?
Now, reissues were not unheard of. All the studios brought back popular movies, but I don't think any film was reissued more often or with more fanfare on each re-release.
Gone with the Wind had this reputation, had this following, had generations that wanted to see it again, and generations that had never seen it.
Leave this gentleman alone because he's tired and he's hungry.
I don't mind, ma'am. I was Baby Bo Wilkes, Living to Heaven, Leslie Hard's baby, and Gone with the Wind.
Come along, Bo.
The film was re-released in 1951 or 52, so that was the first time I saw it. And I remember going on a Saturday with a bunch of friends of mine, never saying anything about being in the movie. I'm sure I knew it, but I really didn't care. But my mother told my friends that I was Baby Bo in the film. Well, that was the end of me, I'll tell you. You know, I never heard the end of it.
There's one thing I do know, and that is that I love you, Scarlett. Kiss me once.
Rhett Butler was such a character, and all of a sudden he comes up against a female character that's almost as strong as he, and then the explosion happens.
Oh, Red.
I don't know of any other movie to have that intensity of that love, hate, attraction, repulsion that you have there. That whole series of missed opportunities and missed cues when one is ready for the other and the other's not ready. It's just so painful.
The character of Scarlett really has become an icon. All you have to do is say the name, and people instantly know what you're talking about. You don't have to say anything more about it.
It is a magnificent example of the convention of the lady in 19th century culture. Scarlett O'Hara is constrained by this role of the lady that she must be as the daughter of an affluent white plantation family. And she doesn't want to fit into it.
Why does the girl have to be so silly to catch her husband?
So she feels to us almost feminist in her defiance of the code, which even her mammy has to teach her.
Miss Scarlett? Why just go around scaring people in that thing?
You ain't supposed to be around people. You's in mourning.
For what? I don't feel anything. Why should I have to pretend and pretend?
Around this time, 38, 39, and 40, there was an appetite for these strong-willed women, powerful women, but they have to be brought low. They have to be brought to heel. Well, Scarlett O'Hara is never brought to heel. She doesn't lose in the kind of sanctimonious way that so many Hollywood movies penalize women characters by just smashing them.
People view Gone with the Wind in different ways. For President Carter and his wife, for example, the heroine of the movie was actually Melanie Wilkes, the self-sacrificing and a Christian wife. For most young people, for most residents of the North, Scarlett O'Hara seems to be the central character. And yet she's a very flawed heroine. She's in the main line of Becky Sharp and Thackeray's Vanity Fair. She's a conniver. She's shrewd. She's a strategist.
But Scarlett, you're doing business with the same people who robbed us and tortured us and left us to starve. All that's past, Millie. And I intend to make the best of things, even if they are Yankee things.
I think in a lot of ways it changes people's lives. I think it, had some bearing on mine. I lost my father at 13, and that was something very hard for me, but Scarlett's character made me stronger.
Oh, Mammy.
Scarlett O'Hara was a very powerful woman from within, and she manifests that by her actions throughout the film. Soft in some moments where it was needed, using that as a strength, strong in other moments where it was needed, physical in other moments where it was needed, and being extremely effeminate in other areas where it was needed. So she played the gamut of roles that a woman can play, all in one film.
You should die of shame to leave me here alone and helpless.
You helpless? Heaven help the Yankees if they capture you.
Gone with the Wind is a tremendous expression of female power, because you not only have Scarlett O'Hara, you've got the constant dynamic of women holding society together as it falls apart. And as the men go fight these wars, it's the women that are actually waging a deeper and more intimate war at home. And that epic is the reason why that film is such a hit.
And why should you go now that after it's all over and I need you? Why?
Maybe it's because I've always had a weakness for lost causes once they're really lost.
There were many heroic characters in movies over the years. For some reason, the character of Rhett Butler had a little more juice to it.
Although you need kissing badly. That's what's wrong with you. You should be kissed and often, and by someone who knows how.
Not only did women find him extremely attractive, but men found him equally attractive and wanted to copy him.
Rhett Butler was my hero. The reason I've got a little mustache like this is I tried to copy him when I was 20 years old. I wanted to be like him, identified with him.
Rhett Butler was always in control. If he got into a tough spot, he could talk his way out of it. If he needed something, he could talk his way into it. And it's archetypal positive male movement.
I knew you'd come.
Good evening. Nice weather we're having. Chrissy tells me you're planning on taking
If you make any jokes now, I'll kill you.
He had great bravado and great charm on screen. So that's, of course, a great deal of it, too. And that entrance in the movie where you don't see him the first several minutes of the film. And it's not that Gable makes an entrance. The camera goes down to him. Now, that's a great entrance.
He looks as if he knows what I look like without my shimmy. Oh.
Rhett Butler's character was very much like Scarlett and did what he had to do to make sure that his life was good and those around him. But, of course, every man has one weakness in their life, and with him it was Scarlett.
Sir, you are no gentleman.
And you, miss, are no lady.
Oh.
Don't think that I hold that against you. Ladies have never held any charm for me.
First you take a low, common advantage of me, then you insult me.
One of the things I always admired about Clark Gable, between scenes, he didn't go lock himself up in his trailer. He would hang out with the guys, the electricians. They all loved him. He was not full of himself. And it was nothing to, come on the set and he'd be straddling a bench playing gin rummy with somebody.
My debts do mount up, don't they, Major?
Gable kind of always played Gable, basically. So what people really like, they really like Clark Gable. And Rhett Butler was the epitome of who Clark Gable was. And I think maybe Clark Gable was a nicer fellow than Rhett Butler, because I knew him quite well. I would have been 11 years old. It was the first Jaguar XK120 Roadster in America. And he gave me a ride the first day he had it. And we went up Mulholland Drive. He said, I want to see what this baby will do. Well, what it did was scared me to death, and I peed my pants. So, I have the definitive position of peeing my pants on Clark Gable's red upholstery and his Jaguar XK120.
We've sort of shocked the Confederacy, Scarlett.
It's a little bit like blockade running, isn't it?
It's worse.
I think people look at Gone with the Wind as being the greatest love story ever told. And so that's universal. Love is universal. And that brings people together no matter what language they happen to speak.
I think it's one of the most wonderful love stories. And just because I'm an optimist, I still think she'll get him back.
Oh, Red. Red, you are good to me.
The first time I saw Gone with the Wind, it's so hard to say. Because when you're in the South, and especially when you're in Georgia, it's kind of like asking when you had your first breath. It's just always been there.
We're fascinated by it and repelled at the same time by some of the elements in it. This is the ambivalence. And for all of its distortions of history, particularly in its portrait of Reconstruction, it really is a historical artifact. It does show us not just the history of the Civil War, but also attitudes in 1939 towards blacks and towards slavery, all of this. So it's a time capsule, and every decade or so, certain of its themes fade and others reemerge. So there's something always timely and timeless about it.
When we was getting worried about you, Miss Ellen, Mr. Gerald.
I'm home.
The Civil War has never really gone away for descendants of those who fought in the Civil War. It is part of their legacy. It was a long national nightmare that we are still dealing with in some way. The horrors of slavery must be confronted. Gone with the Wind is not the best vehicle for dealing with it because it is certainly not honest about the actual feelings of slaves of that era.
This must stop.
And it does take the position of the plantation hierarchy who had won a life of luxury that they imagined as a recreation of medieval chivalry on the backs of slave labor. So there is something in that, okay, that has to be dealt with spiritually, perhaps, by America.
A lot of people really objected to the portrayal of the blacks in that picture. The people that made the picture were caught in the middle. Do they portray them the way they probably existed at the time of the Civil War, or do they try to give them a more modern character? And I think they opted to try to use the Civil War milieu and hope that people would understand that that was the relationship in those times. For most people, that worked.
I hated the part then, and Mr. Selznick understood that it was a difficult part for an intelligent person to play because it was 1938, and I didn't think anybody would go back and have you to be a little slave. But I did everything they asked me to, except I wouldn't let them slap me and I wouldn't eat the watermelon. Mammy said, "You'll never come back to Hollywood. You complain too much."
Of course, the actress that played Mammy won the Academy Award for her performance.
My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you, and God bless you.
Hen McDaniel's role as a slave has unfortunately overshadowed the brilliance of this relationship that she has with Scarlett O'Hara.
Savannah would be better for you. You just get in trouble in Atlanta.
What trouble are you talking about?
You know what trouble I was talking about. I was talking about Mr. Ashley Wilkes. He'll be coming to Atlanta when he gets his leave, and you sitting there waiting for him just like a spider. He belongs to Miss Melanie.
You go pack my things like Mother said.
It is the most passionate relationship of the film, almost equivalent to that of Scarlett O'Hara and Ashley Wilkes and Scarlett and Rhett Butler.
Mammy. Mammy. I'm home.
Honey, child.
Mammy is Scarlett's true mother. It is Mammy to whom Scarlett goes for advice. It is Mammy who sees deeply into Scarlett's emotions, who knows everything that's going on with her.
Don't spoil it, Miss Scarlett.
Turn me loose, you fool. Turn me loose. The dash.
He's her husband, ain't he?
Whereas Scarlett's biological mother doesn't understand the emotional turmoil of her daughter. This is an incredible performance, very inflected, that unfortunately is never getting discussed these days because of the sensitivity that we should properly feel.
You done had a baby, Miss Scarlett, and you ain't never gonna be no 18.5 inches again. Never. And there ain't nothing to do about it.
When I first went to MGM, one of the first things I was asked to do was to check the storage of all our film elements to make sure that no one could steal them. And so I went out onto the back lots of MGM, and there were small brick storehouses with a little fan on the top that revolved around and brought a little air in. And the day I went out there, which I think was in July, inside that film vault was 110 degrees. And I reported back to the company that the film was absolutely secure, but it was all deteriorating from the heat and the humidity. So that was the first signal for people to start to build refrigerated vaults. Most importantly, the film was shot on stock that was manufactured in 1938 and 37, probably. There was a lot of damage, difficult to restore. That was the era when they made what they called color separations, actually like 3 separate negatives. And in order to make an original negative, you had to put those together and run them through a machine to make a new negative.
And mind you don't go philandering with any other girl, because I'm mighty jealous.
But it not only was one of the first films properly preserved, it not only was one of the most expensive preservations ever known, but it motivated the rest of the industry to start preserving film, because the success of Gone with the Wind in re-release made people understand the value of the libraries of film that they owned. They never thought the films had any residual value. They didn't see DVD coming. They didn't see satellites coming.
And another thing, those pantalettes. I don't know a woman in Paris that wears pantalettes anymore.
Oh, what do they? You shouldn't talk about such things.
When the movie came along and I began to collect the movie memorabilia, my main interest was getting some of the early posters. In '67, they had a re-premiere of Gone with the Wind in 70 millimeter at the Lowe's Grand Theater in Atlanta. Then we had a big exhibit at Rich's department store in Atlanta. I knew the manager of the theater, and I said, "Do you have any old material in the theater, in the basement?" And he said, "Well, you can go back there and look. I don't care. If you find anything, you can have it." So I found 4 original posters from Gone with the Wind, and this is one of the ones here that was handmade and used in the premiere, and I'm very pleased with that.
Anytime there's any kind of an auction of any of the artifacts from the picture, the fans show up.
There are wonderful museums all over the South for Gone with the Wind.
In Atlanta, in Marietta, Georgia, there's actually a Gone with the Wind museum. It has the personal collection of a man who just loves collecting Gone with the Wind memorabilia. Everything. It's really, quite frankly, something else.
After Ted Turner bought the MGM library, he restaged the original Atlanta premiere in Atlanta again. And it was extremely successful and lots of fun, and I was there.
It means so much being here in Atlanta, which has been my hometown for 50 years. With the 50th anniversary, we had to have a big celebration.
Fox Theater seats 4,000 people. And it was packed. There, I met Patrick Curtis, who played Baby Bo Wilkes in the movie Gone with the Wind. And when I found out that he had been a Vietnam veteran, and also when I found out that he had been married to Raquel Welch, I wanted to get to know him. And that's become a wonderful friendship. So I've gotten something personally out of the movie Gone with the Wind, which was to know one of the 5, I guess, remaining characters in the movie.
A lot of the people that were there, and there were many, many thousands, many of them have continued to keep up with us at different events, literally, around the world at times. People come from all over, and we've gotten to know them quite well, and we call them Windies with great affection, but they're an incredible group of people that know much more about the movie than we'll ever know.
I am a Windy. A Windy is a person that no matter what's going on, you go to where a Gone with the Wind event is. You travel all around. I did go to Ireland to go to the real Tara, because that's where Margaret Mitchell got the name for the plantation.
I have always been a huge Scarlett fan. I so value my heritage and my family and the roots that I come from, and I feel like I can relate to what Scarlett displayed throughout the book and the movie. The struggles that she went through when she lost everything, it meant the world to her to keep her family together and keep the family land.
People are always interested in hearing the stories. You may need an interpreter in Yugoslavia, but the questions basically are the same. What was Clark Gable really like, and what was Vivian Leigh really like, and what are your memories? And Anne Rutherford has the best memories of everybody because she was at the perfect age to remember everything. So we always sit back and listen to her great stories.
During the cotton picking scenes, Evelyn Keyes and I would be picked up at home at 3 o'clock in the morning and taken clear out to Calabasas. And David Selznick had caused acres to be planted to cotton. And, of course, we were inspected carefully to make sure we had no nail polish or weren't sneaking a wristwatch on the set. When they yelled, "cut," I went to Mr. Selznick and I said, look at my hands. They're all torn up.
Mother said you could always tell a lady by her hand.
Oh, good. That's good. Oh, that's good. Get some more. He was thorough. He missed nothing.
I guess things like hands and ladies don't matter so much anymore.
I was shocked to find what the small role of Karine was has turned my golden years into platinum. I've had the most wonderful 10 or 15 years.
Why can't I step for the ball tomorrow night? I'm 13 now.
You may go to the barbecue and stay up to supper.
It's nice to be remembered, because somewhere in time I'll always be young.
It didn't gross the most money of all time, but We used to, at MGM, try to bring the dollars that it had grossed up to date by taking inflation into account.
When you talk about going to the movies, it was 50 cents, 35 cents, what have you. Even a roadshow attraction, 75 cents, something like, versus $11 or whatever it might be today. This was one of the biggest hits of all time.
To explain its universal appeal, I think you have to strip away a lot of the trappings and get down to the fundamentals. It's about self-reliance. It's about the land, jealousy and rivalry, the fickle nature of love, which could apply to a film made in Czechoslovakia.
You watch certain scenes that you love, there are certain touchstones, and there are certain phrases that have become part of the American vernacular.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
So in some sense, it's just part of us.
Gone with the Wind, even though it was made 70 years ago, seems to be a Rorschach test, like an inkblot test of where the audience is at any particular moment. The last time I saw Gone with the Wind was at the Fox Theater here in Atlanta. We've had so much in-migration into Georgia. The line that drew the most applause from the audience in Atlanta was the line by Miss Pittypat on the Jonesboro Road.
Yankees in Georgia! How did they ever get in?
The audience just roared and clapped. Like, how in the hell did this happen?
People have tried to analyze its attractiveness to people, and from time to time, people would try to copy Gone with the Wind because it is so successful and has stood the test of time for so long. Maybe we can make a picture like it. But to break out the elements and say, this is the reason, but that isn't, I think is a fool's errand because no one has been able to do quite the same thing. They never could.
It seems to have a timeless quality that makes it very, very valuable, even after 70 years.
Fiddly-dee. We've got to have a doctor. I don't know nothing about birthing babies.
Ashley, as God is my witness, they're not going to lick me. I only know that I love you.
That's your misfortune.